with you.
That's fine. Can the caller that's on, ending in 76 identify him or herself?
I think that's the bridge, no?
Is that
That's
the,
not the,
okay, might be. Let me check with John. Let me check with our office right here.
mhm.
Hi, Hi, it's Christine Tibbs.
Oh, Christine. Okay. Thanks, Christine.
Hi.
Thanks.
No problem.
Christine who?
Tips. Christine Tips.
Oh, Tips.
Tips.
Okay, so we need just one more person?
No.
We're going through it now, Laura. Give us just a minute.
No problem.
Let me see. Me in the room.
Okay, Diane is going to do the roll call. I think we may have a quorum. She's going to do the roll call to make sure our attendance is correct.
Good evening. Okay. Ms. Bazemore? Dr. Coleman Farrell?
Can we share the agencies as well, please?
I'm sorry?
Could you share the agencies as well?
Oh, yes. Bazemore Coalition for Black Student Achievement. I don't have her logged on. Dr. Coleman Farrell, Palm Beach State College, I do not show her logged on. Mr. Collins, School Board District 4, he is present. Dr. Diaz, Hispanic Education Coalition, he's attending virtually.
I'm here.
Reginald, Ayiti and Axion. Okay, Mary Evans, Tri-Cities. Laura Feldman, School District 6.
I'm here.
Rachel Frischberg, School Board District 3.
Here.
Randy Gabriel, ESC Advisory Council.
Present.
Sherelle Golden, School Board District 1, and she responded that she would not be able to attend. Sharman Postel, Palm Beach County Council of PTA, PTSA.
Present virtual. I'll also be attending in person in just a little bit.
Okay. Imran Siddiqui, School Board District 5.
Present.
Corey Smith, School Board District 7. And Christine Tibbs, School Board District 2. And I think she was on that phone call there a little bit ago.
Yeah. She's still on. I'm probably just on mute. Christine probably on, but she's still registered. She's still on.
Okay.
I'm here. Sorry, having a little phone trouble. Present.
And that gives us 8, which is quorum.
Right to approval of minutes from November. The minutes was distributed by email previously. If you need there's no objection. We don't need a few minutes to review the minutes. We can move on to approval. Here are no objections to approval of the minutes from last month.
This is Randy. I move to accept the minutes as presented.
A second.
Minutes have to that have been accepted. We'll discuss. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, minutes are approved. At this time.
Charmaine, you're breaking up on my end. Is it just me?
Not sure. Can anyone else hear me clearly?
Now I can.
Okay, any public comments in the room or online at this time?
There isn't any in the, no public's comment in the room.
Awesome. Is there anyone from the public that is not a member or name have not been called in roll call? Can you please state your name and affiliation at this time, please?
Mary Ann Colbert, School District. Manager of K-12 Reading Interventions and Community-Based Partnerships.
Thank you. Ms. Colbert, thank you for being here today. Anyone else in the room? I know Dr. Sheffield, I already have you. And hearing none. Updates from Chief Academic Office.
Good afternoon, everyone, almost evening. Thanks for logging on with us virtually and for those that are here with us in the room. For our December meeting, our last meeting of 2022. I cannot believe we are about to go into another year of 2023. Just a few updates, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ann as we're going to talk around some of our reading interventions, and most importantly, around some of the work that we've been doing around reading recovery, and most importantly, around the teacher capacity. That's what's more important, as one of the initiatives that we had done utilizing some of our, much of our ESSER dollars and so forth, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Right now, in terms of some of the pieces that are happening here centrally from an academic standpoint, is that we are right now, we know that we have a brand new assessment tool that the state is utilizing when they decided that FSA will not be utilized this year. In doing such, there's three different assessments that our students are involved in, progress monitoring, I should say. And they did the first one in the fall, and now our students are in progress monitoring 2. And then the third progress monitoring is in the spring, when they would have generally taken their FSA assessment. So later on, once we return back from the new year, when progress monitoring 2 is all done, I will have that same data team that was with us last month to come back and just do a breakdown in regards to what this data is looking like for us, as it's brand new, not just to our students, but also to our adult stakeholders as well. And to see in terms of what that's looking like, because the plane is being built as we go along here. So also, we have our semester exams. Our secondary students will be involved in on next week as the semester is coming to an end. We know our senior high school students, you know, the last 3 days, they tend to get out a little early because of their semester exam schedule. Not sure, I was out of the town due to death on last week for 3 days, actually. I had to travel. And prior to leaving, I did release the class of 2023 graduation schedule. So you probably have seen the graduation schedule for the class of 2023. If you have not, it is there, already there on our district website. So of course, our high schools were very excited about that. We got it out a little earlier than usual. And we're just continuing, you know, with our new standards, the best standards in terms of building the capacity with our teachers and spending a lot of time there, not just with our teachers offering the professional development, but myself personally, along with the team here, just doing some classrooms and calibrating our walkthrough tools, looking at those core actions, and seeing in regards to the work that we're doing here essentially, what kind of shifts need to take place there here at the central office, because at times we may find that shift needs to take place because it's not meeting the needs of what needs to happen there at our schools with our teachers and students. So that's a lot of what we're doing right now, particularly around the best standards and the calibration that is being done here. Just today, we had our best standards lead teachers here in the boardroom this morning for ELA, where we were just taking a deep dive, looking at those standards, those benchmarks, and working very closely with the lead teachers there that are on their campuses to where we could do some of the train-the-train model. And lastly, for myself, we just finished up the first part of our social studies adoption for our secondary school. The past 2 weeks, the committee, working with our laypersons, our community members and so forth, had an opportunity to where they were looking in regards to identifying new instructional materials that would be utilized for our social studies for 612, not K-12, but excuse me, 612. So now we have, we're at a point where we have our top 2, top 3 choices, depending on the grade level, content, grade level and so forth. They're going to be delivered to the schools starting next week, and schools will have a month to where they will have an opportunity to review the materials that are being delivered, and then, of course, provide feedback, here to the district, to the committee, and then we will continue to move that process forward. And then the last part is that today we started with an adoption process for K-8 adaptive technology for math. So that's just some big buckets of the work that we have going on, and just keeping up with all those legislative pieces and just making certain that we are aligning ourselves and being the best version of ourselves that we could be, and trying to maximize the learning opportunities for our students. So that's just a very high level in regards to some of the work that we're doing currently.
Thank you. I'll ask a question. I had a question, but I'll go ahead as the chair, allow the hands that went up first to ask their questions. So I have Ms. Feldman hands I saw went up first, and Dr. Diaz.
Hi, so,
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I just admitted, we have a Wendy Evans, I think, that was just admitted into the room. I'm sorry, Laura. I just wanted to let Madam Chair know that we admitted Mindy Evans.
Mindy?
Mindy Evans.
Okay, I take that, Mindy. If you correct me if I'm wrong, Mindy, are you someone from, or, I don't think
I didn't hear what you said. Someone from where?
are you a public, or were you recently appointed?
Public.
Okay, perfect. At this time, public comments, we're past the public comment section.
Okay.
So we're currently in our agenda with the update from the chief academic officer. But if there was that you would like to say, maybe after, if there was no objection with the committee, we can, if you had a word or anything, you would, if there was no objection for the committee, I would entertain it before the presentation.
Okay. I'm just going to listen for now, right now.
Okay, no problem. So I think we can continue with our business, and Ms. Laura Feldman, then Dr. Diaz.
you had mentioned that there were, and now I forgot the word, something with math that's going to be rolled out soon, and I was wondering if you can give some information about that.
Laura, you said math?
Yes.
It's the K-8, it's the adaptive technology.
Oh, so what is the adaptive technology?
It's like for elementary, it's our success maker that our students tend to use, the computer for adaptive technology during rotations and so forth. And then in middle school, our students use the IXL math. So it's a computer-based adaptive pieces that they could utilize for additional support.
Okay, so it's adaptive, meaning that it adapts, it changes to the student's level?
Yes.
Okay, because I wasn't sure if you were talking about that or other types of like manipulatives or other such things that work as adaptations. That's what I was trying to figure out. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Diaz? Thank you, Laura.
Yes, I had a question. You mentioned the committee is on its way to look at social studies materials.
Yes.
And my question is, to what extent is the evaluative rubric contain elements of African American, Latino, gender, and Holocaust content as a part of the process for evaluating the materials, since this mandate has been around since 1994?
Well, Dr. Diaz, I can share a copy of the rubric with you, and I actually can have Diane to email Brian Knowles, and actually Nolan, to go ahead and send that to you. But we did put out, when we were working on the rubric, for the various groups that wanted to work with us. And I don't know if you were on the committee when we did the rubric for ELA. Did you participate?
I did not.
Okay. The rubric for ELA, and we tend to follow that model because it worked very well in bringing forth, I think we had a representation from HEC, as well as the Black Coalition, and some others. But I'll be more than happy to have a copy of that rubric sent over to you.
Okay, thank you.
The question that I had was, and I guess, my question, I think it's answered within Dr. Diaz's question. I think, can you send that also to me as well, or to the committee?
I'll just send it to, Diane has already made a note, so I will just send the rubric to the committee.
The other question I had is there any intentions of possibly just sharing or bringing the process for this social studies instruction materials to some caliber, to the SAC meeting, a meeting, so that the public is aware of it, or the parents are aware of it, just so we're not met with the conflict? Because it is the social studies instructional material group it's a public group, right?
It's public. It's public, and we did have, and during the process, because, you have to do your notices, and, it's a long process. So all those
Right.
notices, everything went out. We did have, I don't know the exact number, but when I checked in regards to, did we have any members from the public to come in and to review? We did have some members of the public that went in to review the material.
Okay.
But, our numbers are always low. You would like to see more than what you get, and so forth. But, we definitely make certain that we hold that process tight.
Yes, I actually did the ELA process as well. I hadn't seen anything for the social studies, just in the climate that we are in. What additional proactive measures are we taking so that we're not, again, swarmed in, school board meetings because parents feel like they were not informed of this process or had a voice to this process. And like I said, again, with the climate that we're in and the parents that want the voice, just want to make sure that the process is just smooth and the transition of this instructional material is smooth, if that makes any sense. I'm speaking in code, I guess. Any other questions? Hearing none, Dr. Schaefer, would you do the pleasure of introducing our guest for the Reading Recovery Status Updates and Initiative?
Okay, yes. And again, she has introduced herself, Marianne Colbert. She's our manager for Reading Intervention. And I asked her to come because as we went through our agenda items that you all provided to me at the beginning, I think it was meeting 1 or 2, we went through a list of items that you all would like to see come forth. And of course, that goes in regard to the availability at times. And I was just sharing, the meeting has not started yet, but come in January, I was able to secure, HR that's going to talk around, the vacant positions that may still be available, hopefully going into second semester. The number is continuing to close. That gap is closing, hopefully. But most importantly, around the title versus non-title. And then also I've had the opportunity to talk with Mrs. Baruch. That's our program planner that does the work around our gifted and those gifted screeners and so forth, and the work and the data pieces and so forth around there. So both of them are available for December. I have them both already penciled. They have the calendar invite. So that in turn allows our agenda for January. So in the meantime, in terms of for our December meeting, as I was going through, always try to make certain that we're being intentional and deliberate around our discussion, because as I indicate, this is the purpose of these meetings, to just share what we're doing for you to provide those constructive feedback to us and to just help us get better as as a system, because we both have, we all have something great there, I think, in common, and that's just being that servant for children and want to do right by them. So then I thought about our student academic support plan, and you know, in the student academic support plan, that's that plan that we are now into year 2. And when we went into year 2 around the student academic support plan, it was, the second part was around the teacher capacity. And we knew that these ESSER dollars will eventually go away, in terms of it was provided to try to mitigate the instructional losses that our student had faced during COVID. But we wanted to be intentional and look in regards to what is it that we could do to make a difference, but at the same time, to when those dollars are taken away, that we have built some instructional pedagogy amongst our teachers and so forth. So when it's gone, we have the teachers there. They're the ones that was working directly there with the students, not just our teachers, but also district staff, any adult players. And that's where we are here today. One big piece that we did do around that student academic support plan, around some of our tiered schools, was around the work of reading recovery. And I've had an opportunity to meet with the reading recovery team from the other districts. And they came and we actually hosted a meeting here. And we just talked in regards to, you know, many of the challenges and the successes. And so I asked Marianne if she would come tonight to just give an update, a touch point, a check-in to this group around the work that we're doing here as a district. And as Marianne is talking, I want us all to remember that reading recovery is one of those intervention pieces. It's not the one-all. We're not saying that this is the only piece that we are doing here as a district. We all know absolutely not. I just actually had the director of elementary ed, director of secondary, they presented to the ESC advisory group, I think it was last week. And it was all around the interventions, looking at what interventions are being held in the various schools and so forth, and then how do we streamline and so forth. So this is another part of that intervention piece, but most importantly, tonight we're just going to talk about the work with reading recovery. And I'm going to let Marianne take it from here.
It's a PDF, so.
Oh, okay. Oh, here you go.
Right. Okay. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you. As you can see, this slide is entitled Reading Recovery / Descubriendo la Lectura. So we're excited to say that we have reading recovery in English, and we've also begun implementation in Spanish. So you can keep that in mind as I work through the presentation. So what is reading recovery? First and foremost, reading recovery is a professional development model that provides a school building with a highly trained literacy expert. We're building capacity at the school site with the literacy experts so that we can positively impact literacy achievement school-wide. It also is a highly effective short-term intervention of one-to-one tutoring for low-achieving first graders. In about 40 hours of instruction, the growth is a matter of hours instead of long-term. In about 40 hours instruction, our students can catch up to where the rest of their peers are in the class and continue their learning with classroom instruction without intervention. These students are the lowest 20% of the first graders. The goal is to intervene early and to catch them up with their peers in first grade. So like I said, they can continue to grow and learn without intervention, along with good classroom instruction. And that is a foundation. As we know, an intervention works well and successfully with good classroom instruction. One is not separate from the other. Reading Recovery's trademark is a guarantee of both the high-quality training of the teacher and research-based instruction for each child having difficulty in reading and writing. research shows, I think this is not new information. Research shows that the most important variable in explaining student reading achievement is the teacher expertise, and that is where the foundation of reading recovery sits. And I think we can all agree that the importance of early intervention could not be expressed more and strongly. I'll give you a minute to look at this slide. We cannot wait to intervene. So, What Works Clearinghouse reviews the existing research on programs, products, practices, and policies. The goal is to provide educators with information they need to make good evidence-based decisions. They focus on results, high-quality research to answer the question, what works in education? And what this slide demonstrates is that reading recovery is the only intervention that received a positive rating in all 4 areas. You can see that it's alphabetics, fluency, comprehension, and general reading achievement. It's one of the highest programs reviewed by What Works Clearinghouse. So this is our journey with reading recovery starting in 2018. On the left side, you can see there are some roles here, some teacher leaders. Those reading recovery can only happen with trained teacher leaders who go through a rigorous training, a year-long training with 17 graduate credits to become a trained teacher leader, and they follow strict standards and guidelines with the Reading Recovery Council of North America. So what we had to do in the beginning of our implementation is to train someone to be a teacher leader. And this teacher leader then can train teachers in our schools to be the literacy expert and to implement reading recovery as an intervention for our lowest performing first graders. So in 2018, 2019, we trained a teacher leader. She worked in one school and she impacted 8 students because she was in her training year. So in part of her day when she did the individual lessons with reading recovery, she worked with a first round of 4 and then a second round, which equals the 8. In 2019, 2020, we had one teacher leader in training, which allowed our teacher leader to train 8 teachers from 8 schools, train 9 teachers, and then we impacted 83 students who participated in reading recovery as an intervention. And I won't go over all the years, but let's zip up to 2022, 23, where we are now. You can see we have now 3 teacher leaders. Last year was an exciting year because we trained 2 teachers to be dual certified in reading recovery and Descubriendo la Lectura, which allows us now to support our students who need intervention in Spanish. So this year we have three teacher leaders and 1 in training. We're impacting 33 schools. We have 46 teachers now trained, and we have 4 teachers who are going to be dual certified in reading recovery and Descubriendo la Lectura. They are projected to impact over 378 students. 16 of those will be students in Spanish. So here's some data from last year to show you the acceleration that reading recovery does with students. So what you'll see here is that the chart compares the text reading level growth of our Palm Beach County students to the national data. So the solid lines represent the students in Palm Beach County. You'll see that there is a solid purple line and a solid pink line. The dotted lines then are comparison groups. So if you look at the left side of the chart, those are text levels, and on the bottom, it's fall, mid-year, and end of year. So you can see in the fall with the purple line, these are the students in the first round of reading recovery. They accelerated from not having a text reading level to a level 15, and then they continued with just good classroom instruction and not the reading recovery as an intervention to grow. And when you look at the dotted line, you'll see that is the national first round accelerated progress, and Palm Beach County is right in line with that. With the pink solid line, you'll see that these students came in the fall without a text reading level. They did not receive reading recovery until mid-year, and they were reading below 5 in text reading. But when they received reading recovery, they accelerated. And they accelerated to where the first round students are. So you can see the acceleration when receiving reading recovery. And if you look at the national second round accelerated progress, that's the pink dotted line, that our students are right in line with the national progress. The blue line represents a national random sample of first graders across the country. And this is without being in reading recovery. This is the growth that they made. So you can see that our students who are receiving reading recovery as an intervention are accelerating and achieving beyond the national random sample of students. Now, if hypothetically we looked at where would the kids have been had they not received reading recovery, and the red dotted line will show you that. So you can see the difference in the progress that they're able to make because of reading recovery. Oops, sorry. Here's another example of growth. This is with the observation survey, which is the assessment that all reading recovery teachers give to students, and this is the assessment that they give at the beginning and the middle of the year and the end of the year to show, to understand what kids know and need to know, and to look at their growth. So on the right-hand side of the graph, the very end, you'll see this is the random sample of students in the United States, and they, in a year, will make about 9 months of growth, a random sample of students across the country. The second column in from the right is the Palm Beach County average growth of a first grade student, which is 7 months. Now, if you go all the way to the left side of the chart, you'll see that our children made 14 months of growth who were receiving reading recovery. So they are accelerating their progress and exceeding the growth through receiving the intervention. So now you can see it's broken down. You can see even students, you can look at our ELL students, they're making 14 months of growth too with reading recovery. And across the board, we're seeing just tremendous growth of our students. So I'm just going to give you a minute to look at that. I know I've said a lot.
Marion, this is I'll ask the question.
Yeah, this is, if you look at accelerated progress, progressed, and recommended, I'm going to explain all of those in just a minute. Recommended are students who did who received reading recovery as an intervention, but will need more intervention following. But they still even made 9 months of growth during their time of reading recovery.
What scares me most about this data is that it's short term. There is many studies about reading recovery that it produces a lot of growth the first year and when it is implemented, because it is, highly it's one-on-one, and it goes over a lot of the sight words, very beginning phonics rules that these kids are struggling on, and they do accelerate, but it does not continue. And I want to send the team, and I want to document it. There are studies that show that after kids are in reading recovery, when they're in 3rd to 4th grade, there is no more benefit to this program. And it scares me that the district spent lots of money on this program. And I spoke about this, Ms. Colbert, to you, because it is very dangerous, because these kids might have a learning disability. They might have just, a deficit in phonics. So you're not teaching them all 6 syllable types how to decode. You're only teaching them the very basics. And it's one-on-one, and yes, it's intense, but then when they leave, these gains historically do not show. And we have no data to prove how this cohort is going to do in 3rd to 4th grade. So I'm very concerned about this program, because it's not teaching these kids how to decode if their problem is decoding. And yes, this isn't one size fits all, but it sounds like you're putting the bottom 20% of children in this program. Usually the bottom 20% of children are dyslexic. 1 in 5 kids are dyslexic. So how is this program going to help our dyslexic children when it's not going to teach them how to decode more syllable types than CVC and CVE syllable types? Those are questions for you to answer. I know there are a lot of them.
Okay, you want to go ahead, Mary Ann, and then I'll jump in? Because before Mary Ann go, I do want to jump in, and what I do want to say again, as I indicated, I think we all have our differences, and Rachel, I know, we've had conversation as it pertains around the reading recovery, but most importantly is the work that what we're doing here as a district, and as you indicated, is that you're saying that the data statistics shows that once the students are out of reading recovery, you no longer see that growth. I think that's all in regards to also our approach here as a district, and what our commitment is in regards to the students that are participating, and not just the students that are in reading recovery, but any student, when we see that there is still some kind of instructional gap, and that's our job to continue to provide and develop those support structures to make certain that those learning pieces can continue. But I'm going to come back, but I'm going to let Mary Ann chime in for a minute as well.
So reading recovery is a short-term intervention. It's not a long-term remedial program. So the idea is to accelerate progress so that students can be able to access their classroom instruction on grade level. And once they leave reading recovery, then they're interacting through the classroom instruction. And as I said before, it's about good classroom instruction. It's not a long-term intervention. It's 12 to 20 weeks. It's 40 hours. And in the selection process, we do work with the lowest 20%, but not all of the students in the lowest 20% are selected for reading recovery. There is a rigorous selection process, and even students who begin in reading recovery and who might not make the gains to the average or above the classroom instruction, they still, even in this data, have made 9 months of growth, which means that then we can further look for intervention to support them. There are a lot of misconceptions out in the media. There are papers that have been that have been presented but not peer-reviewed, and that have been full of misconceptions around reading recovery, that it's important, I think, to look at both sides of, the conversation around reading recovery in that way. The reading recovery teacher teaches phonemic awareness and phonics through every part of the reading recovery lesson. And because it's one-on-one, it is very clearly and intricately designed around that student and what that student needs in order to accelerate progress.
But yes, it is designed, it is not systematic, it's not structured.
It is systematic. It is systematic.
It's not intensive. If they introduce a phonics concept, it doesn't go over and over it and over it, and it is in basic phonic concepts, and it's also teaching sight words. And a first grade, you're achieving first grade level because you want to get them where their peers are. And at that point, you might teach them some skills, but then they're going to fall flat when it comes to second grade because now they have to learn control R's. They have to learn vowel teams. And this does not do that. And it's very scary to me because we're spending all this money on this program and investing without seeing if the first cohort in third and fourth grade will pass the third grade FSA or FAST exam at this point. There is lots of data, and I will send it to the group, that shows this does not work, long term.
Ms. Freshford?
So,
Ms. Freshford, thank you so much for your insight. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want us to just kind of bring it back in, and would love for you to share that data through the staff, but also want to respect our presenter to continue the presentation, as well as others who have their hands up or who would like to have a word in. So if we can just, I'm going to go ahead, if it's okay with the presenter, would you like to go ahead, Ms. Colbert, would you like to take another question, or would you like to continue with the presentation? But I do think there was someone with their hands up for a while now, Ms. Feldman. Would you entertain that question at this time?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Feldman, and then we'll go ahead and continue, and then as we go on, we can ask additional questions. Ms.
Thank
Feldman.
you. I have two questions. The first one was on a prior page that where you talked about moving up levels, and that they started out not having a level and then moved up to, I forget which exact level it was. But in terms of what do these levels correlate with? Are they levels per, are there so many levels per year's worth of knowledge, or I wasn't clear what the levels correlate to?
So in reading recovery, the notion of text reading level is small steps in order to accelerate progress. So these levels can be correlated to other leveling systems that are out there, such as the benchmark system with their oral reading records, or other leveling systems. So if you're interested in that information, I'm happy to share that with you. But yes, I mean,
that would be great, because otherwise I really don't have a clear feeling.
Right, the
as to
typical
what
first
this level
grader,
means.
the typical first grader is 18 to 20
At the
when they end the
beginning of
year.
or the end of the year?
when they end the year. And these, our reading recovery students are right on target with that, level
Okay,
20.
so at the end of the year, it's expected that they should be around the range of 18 to 20. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then if you can go back to the last one that you were on, the last page. So the average first grader during
This
the
is
year-
due to a random sample of students, so it's picking students randomly across our reading recovery schools and giving them the observation survey. And then the national random sample is students all across the country in reading recovery districts.
So this
So,
analysis of the average first grader in Palm Beach County gains 7 months worth of, progresses 7 months versus the 9 months nationally. That information is only for the schools which are using the reading recovery program.
yes, the random sample takes place in our students, in the schools where our students are receiving reading recovery.
I see. And do we know what that level is for the greater Palm Beach County?
A random sample? No, we haven't given the observation survey in all 110 schools.
Okay, and the reason why our students are, on average, from this random sampling of the schools that use reading recovery, do we have an explanation as to why they are achieving 2 months fewer worth of knowledge than what is happening nationally?
We would have to do further research in order to, understand what's happening in the school as a whole.
Wouldn't that be helpful in order to understand what needs to get fixed or how to fix it?
Certainly. So it's really looking at the classroom instruction across, what that the students are receiving. We don't know the kids because it's a random sample, of course.
Is there a difference in the percentage of students who are within the ESC program between what we have and what is exhibited nationally? I mean, do we have a higher rate of dyslexic students, for example, or specific learning disorders, or what's driving that? Because then when we want to make sure our fix is going to be centered on what's driving the issue for our students.
Yes, I'm not sure I'm totally following your question. Can you say it again?
Okay, so noticing that our first graders from this random sample of the schools that are using reading recovery achieve 7 months worth of learning gains versus the United States random sample of 9 months worth of reading gains in first grade. My question is what's driving our students from achieving less?
Yes.
And then from there, once we've understood that, what can we do to fix it? It doesn't make sense to implement something that if it's that we have a higher percentage of our students are dyslexic than what was found in the US sample, then wouldn't we want to make sure that we have directed our future programs to ones that specifically work with students who are dyslexic? Or let's say if it's, and I'm just going to say,
I'm not sure.
we're standing on their head and we want to, coming in with a new program that doesn't match the problem, is my question. What are we doing to understand what the issue is so we can better understand how to overcome it?
Okay, so I'm not sure the part about the dyslexic students, but in this random sample, the students are picked randomly. And I think one of the foundations here to look at is the core instruction. What's happening in core instruction for in these schools to support these students? Because intervention is a supplement. It's a supplement. It's, kids are unable to access the classroom instruction as it's provided, so they need some supplemental help in some areas, and that's what intervention is all about. So I think a foundation is to look at, the core instruction, and in 21-22, remember, reading recovery is in first grade only, so in 21-22, Our schools were in their first year of implementing Benchmark Advance. And so they were, beginning to use a new core instructional program. But your question is certainly warranted that we need to look at why our students aren't making 9 months of growth in comparison to the national, random sample, and for us to really take a good look at our classroom instruction, our core instruction.
Well, I understand that, so to take a look at the core instruction, but then it would be taking a look at the core instruction to understand how it's not meeting the needs of the students.
Yes,
And
yes.
even though the sample has been randomly selected, we could still find out of that randomly selected sample what percentage of the students had various learning disabilities, because maybe it's not that the core instruction was not meeting the needs of all students, but maybe there are students who need more specialized instruction.
So the sample is random, so we don't know the kids, but I think your question is warranted that we need to look at the core instruction to ensure it's meeting the needs of all our learners. Students who may have a learning disability, students, I think it's a very good question, and I think it's something, certainly for us to work on.
Okay, thank you.
And I think it's important too, is that, again, it was something, that was very small in our district, and we had the ability to take a little deeper, look a little deeper, in working with our principals, to get a much larger sampling group, to see indeed, is it something that's making a difference? And, and Rachel's point, she said, when it's being utilized, but what happens after first grade or what have you? And those are the kind of conversations it is that what we're having. And as we continue to look at, what we are bringing in, particularly around the intervention piece, the core, we are working with the core. We have a team. We're pulling back those layers, taking the deeper dive. But when we start talking about the intervention and what is it that we're doing with our most vulnerable students, these are the kind of conversations that we need to have. Are we saying that we have it right, that this is saying that reading recovery is the do-all, that that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that we had an opportunity. We brought it into many more schools now. We have an opportunity to do much larger sampling. And we are, we're still looking at the data, taking deeper dives. Laura, you've made some great points. Rachel made some great points in regards to how do you decipher and take a deeper look in regards to what happens after our students are out of grade 1. And those are the conversations that we're having. When I initially started and before Mary Ann came on, we talked about a group that we had not just here in Palm Beach County, but around the state, particularly around reading recovery and what we're seeing, what's happening. And we did it as a table talk exercise, and use others as just thought partners. And did we have all the answers? Did we solve everything in that one day, 1 or 2 days? No, we did not. But we are going to continue to work at it. And I thought that this agenda item, it was good. It was not something that we were going to, not want to have conversations about. We want to have those conversations because, again, it just helps us dig deep and try to do right by our students. Marian, did you have any additional slides?
Yes, I do. I have a couple more.
But I'm sorry, I think you had some hands. Rachel and Dr. Diaz, I'm sorry.
Yes. So one of the things that I wanted to, going to the last speaker's point, was when Reading Recovery did their study, I put it in the notes, studies conducted by researchers associated with Reading Recovery typically excluded 25 to 40% of the poorest performing students from the data analysis. So that is information for maybe why our numbers vary. Also,
That doesn't,
one of the things that I think is important is that, you're putting these students in for 8 months in Reading Recovery. And if they're dyslexic remediation takes 2 to 3 years, we're wasting that time. So are we screening these students for dyslexia or possibility of being dyslexic before putting them in reading recovery? Because if we're not, then you could be wasting the child's time. So please, can you tell me if you are? And if not, and also, I don't know if you're aware, but next school year, the district is required to perform a dyslexia screener. So these dyslexic children cannot go in reading recovery. So my question to you is, are we screening these kids beforehand? And if not, can we start for dyslexia? Because it doesn't make sense to put them in this program because it's not intensive enough and it doesn't go through everything that they need to learn to become successful readers. They need to be explicitly taught how to decode all 6 syllable types and multi-syllable words. And additionally, I'm going to send some studies in the notes that are evidence that this program doesn't work when they're in 3rd and 4th grade. I'm sending you that now in the notes so you can look into it. Okay? Thank you.
So let me just clarify a couple of things. A reading recovery student is in reading recovery for 12 to 20 weeks only. It's 40 hours of instruction, and that's it. End of program. And then and that's actually my next slide. So 12 to 20 weeks, individual lessons, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, 40 hours. And these are at the end of their program, they are given a description. So you can see accelerated progress and progressed means that the students were able to catch up with their classmates in a short-term reading recovery intervention. This is a positive outcome. These students received a full program of 12 to 20 weeks. So progressed children who have made impressive gains but have not reached, they may be slightly below the rigorous standards for accelerated progress after a full series of lessons, another positive outcome. Then we also have the recommended students. And these students in the recommended category have a positive outcome because we've discovered more information and we need to do something different for them. It's 12 to 20 weeks, it's 40 hours, and that's as long as any child would be in reading recovery. An incomplete program tends to be a student who was not able to receive the 12 to 20 weeks. This sometimes happens during the second round of students in the second part of the year. Moved means students have moved. And none of the above means that they may have been taken out for one reason or another by a principal or a parent, or there may be another reason. But I think as you look at this chart, you can notice that we've had an increase of the number of students that we've serviced. We've had an increase in the percentage of students making accelerated progress through the years. We are below the national average for recommended and incomplete students. And in spite of the pandemic, we still made great progress within the 12 to 20 weeks. When I began the presentation, I talked about reading recovery is first and foremost a professional development model. So we're creating literacy experts who can impact an entire school. So currently we have 43 active reading recovery teachers and 4 teacher leaders, which is a total of 47. This year, right now, we have 170 students in reading recovery or DLL. And in the other part of the Reading Recovery Teachers Day, they are working with over 800, or working with about 815 students. That's in the second part of their day. So the literacy expertise is now being able to impact students across the school. So when you divide that by the 47 teachers, the average teacher is working with about 19 students in the second part of the day. They're 4 reading recovery students, so we've got 23 students. So they're working with a large number of students in order to impact. But they're also leading PLCs, they're coaching other teachers, and we've seen comparison data of the reading recovery trained teacher who is working with a small group in the classroom or coaching teachers, and how those classrooms have made tremendous gains. So reading recovery can have a school-wide impact, not just with the 4 individual lessons that are happening, but because we've built the capacity and the expertise of the teacher, they now can impact the school-wide literacy. These are some of the other roles that the reading recovery teachers are doing in the other part of their day. So you can see they're working with students in small group. They might be during the core instruction, it might be intervention, and then they're also supporting teachers in various ways, coaching, modeling. They might be the SBT team leader or a member of the SBT team, PLCs, collaborating with other classrooms. So reading recovery is so much more than just the intervention. It can really be a way to impact the whole school. And that is the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And again, she did have some additional slides data slides, but we'll be here all night looking at some of the additional data piece. But I noticed, Ms. Poster, you do have some hands up, I think. I'm looking at my screen.
Yes.
Randy and Dr. Diaz.
Dr. Diaz, Ms. Randy, and then Ms. Randy. But first, I wanted to say thank you so much for that presentation. I know there's a lot of feedback and some additional information. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that we can, at the very least, receive the full packet with the presentation, the data that was excerpted from it? If it's not on here, I don't know if she bypassed it or if we kind of just took it out so that we're not bombarded with it.
Yeah, there was just some slides that were hidden. So I'll work with Mary Ann in regard, and it was again for the amount of time that she had. So I'll work with her, and then we will compile the entire piece.
Right. I also have some additional information that we can send about reading recovery, which might clear up some of the misconceptions that are out there, because I think it's important to, look at both sides and, be aware of, the misconceptions and what reading recovery is really about.
Thank you. I will see. As you can see, I won't make it in, Ms. Sheffield, so
that's okay.
But Ms. Dr. Diaz and then Ms. Gabriel.
Yes, I haven't reviewed the research on reading recovery, but I have reviewed a whole lot of other research in my career. And one of the things we need to ask ourselves is, what is a reasonable expectation of a program that takes a maximum of 40 hours? In an ideal world, those gains would be present in 12th grade. So while I'm not familiar with this research, I am familiar, for example, with research on Head Start and kids that had Head Start versus kids that didn't. And Head Start kids made very significant gains. However, if those gains are not supported properly, they will be gone by about 5th or 6th grade. So to say that a program which is a 40-hour intervention should have effects, years and years down the road, while we would all like that, that is simply an unrealistic expectation. Now, as far as the components of the reading recovery group, while I understand it's a random sample, part of the discussion tonight is to try to disaggregate the achievement of, let's say, kids in the lower 20% who are not dyslexic with kids who are. So I would suggest that the district disaggregate that data, and within the reading recovery group, I'm sure you have some of each, some which are dyslexic and some which aren't. And then look at those two groups and see whether the dyslexic group fared as well or better or worse than the other kids. And that would, take care of some of that mystery. Finally, it was pointed out that most of the instruction of reading recovery kids is not conducted by the reading recovery teacher, but rather by the regular core first grade teacher. And some of you may remember an issue that I brought up a few months ago, which is an issue that has bothered me greatly and continues to bother me. And that is the distribution of highly qualified teachers in Title I versus non-Title I schools. Kids in reading recovery, I'm going to take a wild guess, are disproportionately in Title I schools. And what we have in this district is a pipeline whereby new vacancies tend to predominate in Title I schools. That's where more people are getting hired in. Then they put in their 3 or 4 years, then they transfer to suburbia, and Title I schools then become a revolving door for new teachers. And roughly half the percentage of highly qualified teachers as non-Title I schools. To me, that is a far bigger issue than reading recovery. But if we're looking at instruction, we also have to look at who is providing the bulk of the instruction. It is not the reading recovery teacher. So I just want to throw that out there as food for thought.
Thank you, Dr. Diaz. Randy?
Gabriel? Randy Gabriel? Okay, we're gonna
Oh, I
go.
had to unmute, my mouse wasn't working. Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. First, do we use this program for students identified as a student with a disability ever? If they're already identified, so let's say they have they're under other health impaired and they have a learning, they learn slower, or they're high functioning autism. Do we ever use this program for those students?
No, if they're already currently receiving an intervention, then we wouldn't have reading recovery.
Okay, and so in theory, this should be, one of my programs screens about 1,200 children a year between the ages of 0 to 5. And out of that 1,200, most of them are being screened between the ages of 3.5 and 5 years old. Of that number of students, the data shows us that over about 50% or more, their main learning environment is home. They have no preschool, they have no they don't go to a child care center, they don't go to an early learning center. And these are the kids that we find are behind at that point, because they, for the most part, they've been home, and it's more environmental delays than anything else. But with that being said, because I'm looking at this data that all the stuff that Rachel put into the chat, and this is old. It's over 20 years old. It's the late 90s, basically. Is there any current research on reading recovery?
Yes, we can share the I3 study.
Okay.
That was more recent.
That would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. The last comment from Ms. Frischberg regarding this topic?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I asked this before. Can you screen the children that are in reading recovery right now for dyslexia? Because it would behoove us to know that right away. And, if these are the lowest 20%, why even start this program that's very teacher intensive So is that something that you can do or have done? And can you answer, can you look into doing that and tell me if that's something that can do in the future? Like, if that makes sense, I want to make sure that I'm just not saying a comment that's not going to be acted upon. I want to know that you guys go back, and discuss this and figure out a way to screen, because why give a child this much resource when it's not going to be effective? Because it's not the effective program for dyslexia. It's not evidence-based for a dyslexic child. So is that something you can do?
So to answer your question, Ms. Rachel, we definitely will take, we take your feedback and have conversation and to see in terms of what does that look like? And we definitely will take that and have some conversation. Of course, bring Kevin to the table as well.
Okay. Thank you. And then I'm also asking, because you have a cohort that went through when did you start this? How many years ago? Can you see how they do on the FSA, or check how they did on the last FAST? Can you do some data on your first cohort that went through it and see how they're doing now and present that data to us, on the individual child? Because now, how long ago was the first time you did this?
So,
How many years ago?
I think one thing you want to keep in mind, and, Mr. Diaz, thank you for, reiterating, this is a short-term intervention program for first grade. And once they exit the program, then it's good classroom instruction that's going to carry them forward. So, to say that in third grade that it was reading recovery that didn't help them be successful is a conclusion that isn't really something that's conclusive in that way, because the program is designed to help students in first grade catch up with their peers. That is the design of reading recovery.
But my concern is with that, with dyslexics, which is the bottom 20% normally, is that these kids can memorize words. So in the reading recovery, there's a lot of sight words, there is some phonics, there is a lot, they're intensively reading first grade material, which isn't very difficult, that doesn't have a big vocabulary. So they're making gains, they're tricking the system. So now, I don't think this is in my opinion, and others have said this, not just me, it's not effective instruction for our bottom 20% that's usually most likely dyslexic. So yes, they're making gains and they're catching up to the other first graders, but is that because they can decode, or is that because they've memorized words? We need to analyze that data. Is their decoding increased? What has increased? Is it their sight word vocabulary that's increased? So that's my fear, is that we're doing this program, they're increasing, but it's so temporary that once they stop getting it, they're not going to make gains, because we haven't fixed the problem, the root of the problem, which other programs do. They teach children how to successfully decode, which then fixes their reading problem. Therefore, they can be on grade level in third grade. So do you understand what I'm saying, and why?
I understand what you're saying.
Why we really should look at that cohort and see how they're performing in third grade, because if none of them, or a very small percentage of them, pass third grade FAST exam, then that's indicative that this program is unsuccessful and we shouldn't spend so much money on it. I don't want us to waste money. I'm trying to look out first.
Right, but I don't think what happened to them in second grade, what happens during third grade, because if a child exits reading recovery and they, we're going to continue to watch them, certainly with good classroom instruction, the core instruction. And if the teacher sees that they're not, successful, then, they'll intervene again. I think that's something to think about. Reading recovery can't control what happens beyond reading recovery. So I think that's something to keep in mind, that when you look at third grade, you can't attribute it to reading recovery, totally, because there's a lot of things that have happened to the kids between then, between first grade and third grade. I also would like to send you some information so that you can have a clearer picture about how reading recovery does address phonological awareness and phonics all throughout the lesson in a variety of ways. And there's a number of documents that I can share with you. Because I'm not sure of what your sources are. I think I can, I think because of what's out, I might be able to anticipate some of the sources that you're looking at, which have a lot of misconceptions about reading recovery, and I'm happy to, work with you and to, share with you some of those so that we can, be on an even keel conversation around, what is truly reading recovery and what are some of the misconceptions that are out there.
I understand that, I appreciate that, and I will read them. But I think, logically, what reading recovery is getting someone up to a first grade level. You learn to read up until third grade. There's this expression, you learn to read until third grade, and then after third grade, you read to understand, to learn. And you're just giving these kids a little snippet, and then you're pulling it away, and then they're left in the great big ocean. So I think it behooves us to start them in a program that will get them to third grade reading level versus just getting them just, you're giving them a little bit and then dropping them. And that's the problem because of the way it's implemented, that it only does first, it only does just a snippet of knowledge up until first grade. I think that's an issue in the way it is structured. And I hope you could see that as being a problem, that you're not learning all the skills you need to learn to read. And if these are kids that have a disability that hasn't been diagnosed because they're the bottom 20%, then I feel like even though it is only, up to 20 weeks, you said, we're still wasting these children's time. That's all I'm saying, and our district's resources.
And I got it, Rachel, but I think it goes back to the core instruction. So around those pieces that you're talking in terms of the work that we're doing with our students that are in reading recovery in first grade, when they get to second grade, at the end of the day, and we talked about even in first grade, is that core instruction and making certain that we are also being intentional and deliberate with the teachers that's providing the core instruction, and how the teacher providing the core instruction, the teacher providing the intervention, all those teachers coming together, working together for the good of the student. If we do that, not just in first grade, second grade, third, all grade levels, we will, of course, we're going to meet the needs of our students. But point well taken, Dr. Diaz.
Yes. And that'll be the last comment for tonight regarding this, because we are at 7:07, so want to have time for final comments and topics for next month.
Just a really quick point that any program that makes documentable gains is not a waste of time. Number two, we should be also looking at reading recovery students and comparing them to students of similar background, i.e. lower 20% first graders who don't get reading recovery. That's a very valid comparison. And I will be willing to bet you that students who don't get reading recovery do worse than those that do. And I haven't reviewed the research. On the other hand, in terms of long-term gain, which we would all like to see, that's more a matter with the core instruction and how that process in reading recovery is followed up. And are all kids getting sufficient follow-up instruction? Are they all getting access to high-quality teachers? And I suspect there's some discrepancies there. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any additional comments, Ms. Goldberg, that you may have had? And I do, prior to you answering that, I know you did state several times that you would be, you would submit those additional documents and data to us, as well as any additional documents, if you can, through the staff, submitted to all committee members, not just Ms. Freshberg. And at this time, I turn the floor back to Ms. Sheffield if you had any additional questions or final comments regarding the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And of course, thank all of you all for the heartfelt conversations around the work that we're doing. And then I also neglected to say, as we were in our deep conversation, I think we also had our board member that has joined us. And if you all watched the meeting, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where the reorganization meeting where they've selected their committees that they will be sitting on this year. And Ms. McQuinn, by far, wanted to join our academic, Superintendent Academic Advisory Council. So I think that she's on with us tonight on the phone bridge. Ms. McQuinn, are you there? Okay. She's probably trying to figure out that to unmute. I think she's on the phone bridge, but we'll be getting her set up. And she will, be joining our meetings occasionally as well. But again, we do have some takeaways and some pieces that we need to get back to the committee. Definitely appreciate the conversations. And again, we know that we're definitely there, not perfect, but everything that we're doing, we are being intentionally trying to make a difference in the life of our students with great intentions. And that will be it for me, Madam Chair. And then, of course, I want to wish each of you, if I don't see you prior to our closure, I think it's the 21st, I wish you and your family happy holidays during this season. Madam Chair?
Yes, somehow I disconnected by accident.
I think you're muted. You're muted.
Okay, I was asking if we had the opportunity to get Ms. McQuinn back on. I'm sorry, I had dropped off.
No, we didn't get her. I'll make sure Diane will work with her office tomorrow, and make certain that she, that she has all the links, because I think she called in. So we'll make certain that she has the Google Meet link, and understand she can log into the link, not necessarily have to call in. We'll make certain. Join us in the boardroom here.
Not a problem. And at this time, I see one more question, or I think there's a question or comment from Ms. Feldman.
Yes, well, a couple things. One, I wanted to say also Happy New Year to everybody, and thank you for taking the time to put together this presentation and answering our questions. And I look forward to hearing more information about it in the future. And I was not able to make last month's meeting, but I do have a question relating to that. And I'm hoping that this can be included in our, I think at the end of the minutes, it mentioned that we would be readdressing some of the questions, the answers to some of the questions in a future meeting this year. And I would like to take a look at, and I understand that schedules are not cookie cutter and exact between schools, but I would still like to take a look at to make sure that within each region, to find out how many schools, well, preferably within the district, to find out how many schools are offering the accelerated classes, for example, AP Computer Science A, AP Physics, AP Calculus, AP Chemistry, AP Biology, to help us understand better that and see that we're not leaving schools with students who don't have access to these classes. So the other part of it is if one school does not have one of those classes, but the next school that's within somewhat close proximity does offer it, are students able to switch between classes? So that's a secondary, switch between schools so they can get the advanced coursework that works best for them. So that's another added question in there, but certainly to do that analysis of what of these advanced courses are offered at which schools. Because I know years ago I'd looked at it and we had schools that were not offering these advanced STEM classes. So I'm hoping that that's changed over time and that more of our students across our district have access to them.
That is, thank you so much, Ms. Feldman. And Ms. Sheffield, if you want to add that or as a additional topic for the future, but I would recommend, Laura, no, December 19th in the boardroom is the superintendent for Black student achievement that they would be presenting on this specific topic. And that is also an additional area that question can come to, because they do have subcommittees and committees that really do a deeper dive in that specific topic. So I would implore you to bring that back December 19th at 5 p.m., I believe,
Yes,
in
it's
the
at 5.
boardroom.
I would love to come, except for the fact that I will be out of town that night. Actually, I'll probably be on the plane returning home at that time.
Okay, if you can just send me, we're not on that committee together, so you can definitely send an email regarding that, and I'll make sure I get it
Well,
to you.
actually, I don't know because we are on this committee together, so.
Okay, if I was talking about your specific question or what you were looking for, I can't.
Well, I'm hoping it can be brought up here. So you
Okay,
can take a look at it.
okay, and sunshine law is that we are not discussing something that will be up for a vote, not
In
necessarily.
our committee, right.
Exactly. So
Right.
I will let you deal with staff with that, or you can go directly to the superintendent, but I just wanted you to know that that is a specific topic that they would be discussing on December 19th, and that particular committee have, because we already have 2 things for January, and those are pretty loaded, that I'm also concerned that we might not complete January, that they might go into February as well. So I want to make sure that that's a great topic that you brought up, but I also want to make sure that that topic, that it's heard. And if there is someone that's currently looking at that and we can cross work the committees, I think that that's also important, because we all have different, I guess, charges in our respective committees. But that's all I wanted to share with you, that it is something
Thank
that
you. And I'm happy to hear that that's being looked into. And I think it's a great idea to do some co-work together on that. And at this point, it's this analysis I could foresee being useful for master board planning for next school year, because this school year has already been done.
Awesome. At this time, I don't see any additional hands up. Is there anyone in the room that have a question or comments? If not, I will say have a happy holidays, and a happy new year. We will see you all in the New Year's. And Madam Dr. Sheffield, or Secretary, thank you for the work that you have been doing in supporting this committee. And if there is nothing further, meeting is adjourned, or I'll entertain a motion for meeting to be adjourned.
This is Laura. I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
The motion was at 7:18 by Laura, second by Dr. Diaz. And thank you. Have a great evening, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Sheffield, I will be sending you my report. I'll send you the board report just to review.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there, so I can give my report, because the board meeting is on Wednesday, correct?
Yes, on Wednesday the 14th.
Yes.
All right. Day after tomorrow.
I know, they go so
All right.
fast.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, God.
Good job. Ma'am, you handle yourself real well.